I'm delighted to welcome today Scott Walker, who is a consultant solicitor with Richard Nelson LLP. And Scott, you specialise in wills and probates. Not exactly the most riveting topic, but I know you've shared some stories with us that will inspire people to actually sit up and take notice, because it is a really important area of law and life that a lot of people kind of sweep to one side, but it really is important to listen. So sit up, have a pen ready, listeners, and over to you, Scott. Tell us a bit about what do you mean by wills and probates? What is a will? What is probate? What's the difference?
Oh, good morning, Elaine. Yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction, and good to be here. Yeah, so wills and probates. So I mean, I do all sorts, and it really kind of encompasses, so making a will, and then the probate side is then what happens when you die ultimately, and dealing with your estate. So making sure all your assets are dealt with, you've paid off all your liabilities, deal with any tax. So that's the probate side. Can be quite involved, but it's very much about supporting the people, the loved ones who are left behind, helping them through the process, because it's horrible to deal with, and at the same time going through bereavement. So that's probate. And then I also do so powers of attorney, so lasting powers of attorney, which is being able to make sure you have people appointed, so people who can make decisions for you if you become ill. So as we say, you may lose mental capacity, so your decision-making ability may be affected by a mental illness or some other illness. It might be dementia, and that's very much about during your lifetime. So it's the difference between the will and powers of attorney, which often comes up, is the will is about what happens when you die, and then the powers of attorney are very much about what happens when you're alive. So, but yeah, as you say, it's a difficult topic people to talk about, quite rightly so.
I've it reminds me I need to look at my will, because now I live in Portugal, and there's other rules in Portugal. I've got a UK will, and there's conflicting guidance that I've received. Yes, you can use the English will. No, you can't. But either way, you need to keep your will updated. I know I've got a charity mentioned in my will that I no longer support, so I need to alter that, and things happen in the family over the years. How often should people revisit their wills? Because once you've made a will, is that it, or should you really really revise it every so often, or review it rather?
That's such a good point, because absolutely you should keep it under review. And I often say, we used to say, every 3 to 5 years. I often tell my clients, if they can, every couple of years, at the very least, because it just gives an opportunity just to check and just highlight any changes, like you've mentioned. There could be things that you might want to change, minor things, or there might be a significant event in your life which is happening, moving abroad, the loss of a loved one. So reviewing them is equally important as actually making them. So certainly every couple of years.
And where is the best place to keep a will? Because again, does the lawyer keep it? Do you keep it? Does it go in the bank? Does it go in a special death box? A friend of mine has a death box, and everything in there is in this box, and her children know where the box is. Where do we keep it, the will?
Oh, I love that idea of a death box. I think that's such a great thing to do. So I would certainly recommend that as one option. And so most of the time, if you make a will through a solicitor or will writer, or somebody involved with will making, then they will often store the will for you at their office. So they'll have a storage facility somewhere safe, a strong room or fireproof storage. So that you know, and I usually say that's probably the best option, particularly if you are making a will with a solicitor. It will keep it safe, the original safe, and then you can have a copy keep at home. And then, you know, the other options are, if you know, if you do have a safe storage at home, you know, whether that's a box as you mentioned, or just somewhere where you know it won't be destroyed. That's the main worry. So that would be another option. You know, and banks do, some probably still do offer a deposit box storage, and you know, occasionally I've had clients where they have been keeping the wills there. So you know, that's very much still an option. Usually, I would say with a solicitor or the will writer. Right.
You mentioned will writer. What's the difference between a will writer and a solicitor?
Yeah, so will writers are, so the main difference is that, so will writers don't tend to be regulated under the SRA. So as a solicitor, we are regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which means that we need to have certain insurance requirements in place, so professional indemnity insurance. So if something goes wrong, then the client's insured, or we are insured to help the clients with the problem if it's caused a loss, as well as being under other strict regulation in terms of how we operate. Will writing is not, outside of a qualified lawyer, is not regulated as such. So, you know, the argument is often that, you know, there are lots of people doing will writing, you know, and they don't have any safety net for their clients. They may not even have, you know, the right experience. Having said that, there are lots and lots of will writers who aren't necessarily qualified lawyers, but they still are, you know, have lots of experience in will writing. They also have insurance for their clients because there are other bodies which will support and insure will writers. So I think sometimes they can get a bad press unnecessarily. And in all honesty, you know, some of that has come from the legal profession, you know, because we don't like this idea of competition. But you know, I often say, well, you know, actually there's plenty for everybody, and will writing is so diverse that you know, you have a choice, you know, of who to use and how to do it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
So how did you, thank you for that explanation, Scott, how did you decide to be a solicitor then rather than a will writer? What led you to become a solicitor in the first place?
Oh goodness, I seem to remember feeling, so it was kind of, I decided I wanted to go to university, so I went to college after school, but then started working, and then decided I really want to go to university. And law just seemed to be a fascinating subject. Can't really pinpoint what led me to law, but I studied A-level law as a way of boosting my, well, to enable me to go to university, actually, because I didn't quite have enough. I did a GMBQ at college, so I needed another A-level for the entry requirements. So, and I just really enjoyed it, in all honesty. And you know, you study all aspects of law. Criminal is a standout, which lots of people say. And then when I went to university, I studied wills and the law, when, you know, what happens when you die, and all the related subjects within wills and succession. And I think that led me down the path to qualify as a solicitor. You know, there was something within that subject which really sparked my imagination. There seemed to be a creative side to it. It was very people based. you'll probably say I was a people person, or very much enjoy helping people. So it was, yeah, it was just the fact that I really wanted to study law, and then I decided to take it to the next level and qualify as a solicitor, and that was a challenge. So there was a time when I felt that I may not actually qualify, but I probably would have gone down, a different route. So maybe become a will specialist, will writer, or move into that area. So yeah, it was a long journey, but a really enjoyable one.
How do you keep happy in such a miserable topic? To me, it's a miserable topic. I know you find it fascinating, but talking about death all the time, and then if you're not talking about death, you're helping sweep people up who've experienced death and going through bereavement. I mean, it doesn't sound a very happy place to me. So how do you protect yourself? How do you remain sane in this environment?
Oh goodness me, yes, such a really good question, and it's, in all honesty, at the moment, I don't know. I'm still kind of exploring that side of it, and I think part of it is definitely about the people you're supporting. So there's very much this feeling of, yes, I'm doing some really good work here. And that's probably, it's a little bit kind of self-indulgent, but there is that feeling that you really are helping these people, through this difficult time. And I think, in reality, what tends to happen is when you start working for a law firm, you just get wrapped up in the day-to-day and get, trying to help your clients as much as possible. So you kind of get this, or in my experience, a bit of separation from the subject matter and the fact that you're dealing with all these difficult difficult subject matters, and it does have an impact on you. And it's only since probably actually since COVID, I think that was really the turning point for me, and probably for a lot of people, to actually recognize the impact on working in this area, probably because of everything else that was going on. And then when I moved into consultancy, it changed. So I had to almost reinvent myself in terms of how I was helping my clients and delivering my services. I had to really have a kind of deep dive about what it is I do and how can I market that, because I was now self-employed and I needed to be doing that. So that helped me to kind of just think about, this is, what can I do to help protect myself as much as helping my clients. And it's very much about looking after, taking your well-being seriously, which I certainly struggled with in the past, working at law firms, and I know lots of lawyers do. So just turning it and just saying, well, actually, I need to make sure that I'm taking my well-being seriously and doing all the things I know I should be doing, like exercise, eating well, and everything else which goes with that. So, but that's still very much a new journey, and understanding that side of the work.
You've mentioned eating well and exercising, that type of thing, but how do you deal with the mental side of things? Because a lot of the clients you deal with, I would imagine, would be older people, I'm guessing now, older people, or people who may not be old, but they've had a dementia diagnosis, or they're starting to lose memory and faculties and what have we. So how do you remain sane yourself? I mean, are there any particular, do you meditate or yoga, or do you is there any tips that you can pass on to other lawyers who are in this situation dealing with these types of topics?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned meditation, and that is something I do. I started meditating probably about a year, 18 months ago, and have felt the benefits of that. I do it consistently, so I try and make sure I do it not every day, but most weekdays, and usually at the end of the day. I find that helps me just to process the day and relax, set myself up just to try and have a restful evening. So absolutely, meditation helps me, and I've had some great experiences with that. The other things are, it's well, as I said before, I think I'm probably still on a bit of a journey with this, and trying to find ways to help me deal with the mental pressures and stress. But one thing which has really helped is self-awareness. So that I just exploring how I react to things, what my thoughts are, when I'm helping clients with this. And as you say, we do help and see clients who are very poorly, and they may have dementia or some other illness. So I think being able to recognize your triggers and being able to not control, but find a way away from that. The other thing is gratitude. One thing I've noticed fairly recently is recognizing how fantastic these people are. The people that we help with dementia, for example, how really they go about their life despite this really challenging time, and just recognizing that I'm very lucky not to be in that position, and also very lucky to be able to help them if I can. And so so gratitude and taking inspiration from those clients, I found has certainly helped me, particularly over the last couple of years with COVID and the lockdowns.
It's amazing. We all learn from each other, don't we? There's not a day goes by where I don't learn something or other from somebody or something. When I had stage 4 cancer, I learned about breathing, different forms of breathing. In particular, I found Buteyko breathing very useful, which is otherwise known as nose breathing. So you close your mouth, you breathe in through your nose, then you breathe out through your nose, and then you pause. And in that pause, the oxygen and the carbon dioxide ratios change somehow. I don't understand the science of it, but it helps considerably, particularly with people who are always on the go, just that calming, few moments. And the longer you can pause for, you can't just go straight in. When I first started to be trained, I could only pause for 7 seconds, but I got it up to about 40 in the end. But if you're anywhere around about 20 and above, that's where the magic happens with the health and well-being. So that's something as well to add into the mix. So Buteyko it's a Russian gentleman that invented the concept, Buteyko, Buteyko breathing. I don't meditate. I can't meditate in the traditional fashion. I'm not somebody who's going to sit on a hill, legs crossed. I can't cross my legs anyway, and help, go, that's not me. But I was told years ago that I actually do meditate, but I'm an active meditator. So for me, it's gardening. It's sitting in the local cafe daydreaming and having a glass of wine. It's washing up. It's all these. It's driving. All these type of active things. That's a form of meditation as well. So we tend to beat ourselves up that if we can't sit still for 5 minutes, and again, it depends on our personality style, which is my specialism. So when we acknowledge, and I love the fact that you said about self-awareness, when we're aware of who we are, we can then better manage ourselves. So we can't We don't have faults. You mentioned faults. We have limitations, in my view. There's nothing wrong with us at all. We're all perfect, but we do have limitations, and it's being aware of what those limitations are, and then how we can manage that situation to best advantage for everybody. So what's the difference? You mentioned consultant solicitor, and you mentioned 18 months. So something happened by the sounds of things. So what happened, and how is a consultant solicitor different to a non-consultant solicitor?
Yes. So as a consultant solicitor, we're self-employed, and so we still work for a firm. So we do our work through a firm. So I do mine through Richard Nelson, but we are just classed as self-employed. So the idea used to be, so traditionally when you was when you were a consultant, it was, you perhaps had a client following you, or even perhaps nearing retirement. But it started to kind of expand into a new way of working, a new model. So, the whole idea of lawyers being self-employed, doing their work for a firm, has been around for a while, and it's certainly increasing. So that's the key difference. It is, you're not tied to anybody, you're not working, as an employee of a firm. You're very much on your own, which means, so it's a way of being able to have your own business. You certainly need to treat it as having your own business and as if you had your own firm. But the advantage is that all that side of it is taken care of. So the firm that you do your work through, they provide all your resources, provide insurance, and all of the things that you would need to do if you actually owned your own law firm. And so you take a split of any fees. So you're not paid a salary. You have so you work on a commission basis, but the split is between, so you take a certain amount of any fees that you bill, and then the firm will take the rest to pay for the setup costs. And so it's as I say, it's growing with popularity for lawyers of all ages, not necessarily just those who are either entering retirement or have a client following. It just gives, people like me, I started pretty much from scratch. So it was an opportunity to, be able to do all of the business related stuff. And also to be able to do other things. So I'm a visiting lecturer, I do some training work. So it gives you enormous freedom and flexibility. But you're still, you're still able to still be a lawyer and, providing services in the usual way as you would if you were working for a firm. Wonderful.
Visiting lecturer, what do you lecture in?
So I also lecture in wills and probate. So I also do, so mainly wills, probate, tax and trusts as well, and some court of protection, mental capacity work as well. And it's mainly for postgraduate students, so would-be lawyers, so people, students who are wanting to enter into the profession, and they're either doing law school, as we would normally say, so doing a course which would lead them to be able to qualify as a lawyer. But I also teach on undergraduate level, so I also teach at degree level, which has also been great.
Wonderful. Do you do that in real life with real people, or are you online these days?
Yeah, so most of my teaching I do is actually face to face. So I have done some online teaching, so they still do some subjects which are on streamed teaching, as they call it. But I must admit, I do prefer teaching face to face. It's completely different experience, and it I think from a learning point of view, you know, there are some advantages of remote teaching, but I think from a learning point of view, the interaction, the connection with the students is a lot better when you are, you know, in a classroom, and there's a bit more freedom as well. I'm finding, you know, a bit more of an opportunity to have, you know, a bit of fun and engage students and just relax.
I do miss live audiences. I used to do a lot of public speaking when I was in the UK, and I had a radio show as well, and I had live guests coming live in the studio each week, and I miss that kind of interaction. But equally, I've got a lovely life balance here in the Algarve in Portugal, so I'm not complaining. It's just a different way now, isn't it? And we're all learning different ways. So to close then, Scott, how what advice would you give to anybody who hasn't yet got a will, and how do people get hold of you?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, absolutely. Making a will, it is so important. It's a bit of a cliche, but it is so important, and it is difficult to do. I think it's one of those tasks where it's easy to put off. So, you know, I often say to people, just make a start. You know, jot some thoughts down, and because that will just open up the thought processes. Talk, you know, if you're doing a will with a partner, for example, you know, talk to each other about it. You know, even if it's just, you know, a few minutes, just to you know, have an initial conversation about it. And then alongside that, powers of attorney, just as important. So, you know, I often say to people, when you're making wills, when you're making powers of attorney, it's more than just doing. We often think, you know, it's making a physical document as a will, you know, this document that we should have, but it's a lot more than that, because it does give you this opportunity to really plan and think about what you want, you know. And even more so with a power of attorney, you know, if we become ill later, well, what do we need to be able to tell our loved ones that we would like to happen to us if we need care, if we did develop dementia, you know, what's important to us. And that's an opportunity to you know, record that and talk about it.
Is a power of attorney then similar to a living will? I hear people talking about living will. What's the difference?
Yeah, so they are different, but very similar in terms of what they do. So living wills, as we now call them advance decisions. So that's stating that you want or that you don't want a particular course of treatment. So it's usually medical related. So it might be that, you know, you don't want a particular course of treatment, or, you know, you don't want to be resuscitated. So it's a way of just being able to make sure that happens or doesn't happen from a legal point of view. And then the power of attorney will also cover decisions and medical decisions like that, but the difference is that you've got somebody making those decisions for you. So you decide with the power of attorney, well, you know, I would like my partner, my children, to make those types of decisions for me, and the power of attorney gives them the legal authority to do that. So that they often, to be honest, living wills, powers of attorney, they often go hand in hand. So you can make both, and it comes down to, you know, whether there's any particular preferences or wishes when it comes to, you know, medical decisions and treatment decisions.
Yeah, and of course revise frequently, or 3 to 5 years or whatever feels right, or change your circumstances. Really important to do that. Thank you, Scott. It's been interesting speaking with you and learning a bit more about what you do. And how do people get hold of you?
Oh, yes. So probably the best way to get hold of me would be on LinkedIn. So if you type in Scott Walker Solicitor, I'll probably come up. And or on the Richard Nelson website. So Richard Nelson LLP.co.uk, and my details will be on there.
Marvellous. Thank you very much, Scott. Have a super day.
Thank you, Elaine. You too, and thanks for having me on. It's been very good. Thank you.